So throughout our entire marriage, as Heidi said, we've been married almost 17 years. I felt like we always put our children first. We always put each other first. And although we went to church, God was never the first piece of our lives at all, ever. And throughout our marriage, an addiction that I had, and decisions that were made because of that, literally broke the trust in our marriage completely.
I came to a place where I was just done completely with our marriage, and I was just ready to move on. And it was funny. It was like that was almost the people that I was hearing guidance from had, my best interest at heart, but it was just, get a divorce. It's fine. It's fine. God is totally cool with you getting a divorce. Just get a divorce. Just be done. You're done. You've been hurt. You're done. So I was done. And we put the house on the market, and our house sold within 24 hours, and everything just was going so fast.
I had a couple of stepfathers, and I didn't even know my biological father. And so this example that I had, it just didn't feel real. It didn't feel like that's what the example of a father should be. So I kept thinking that if I grow up my own way, well, as I become a man, I'm going to find a better way to do this than the men who came before me. So coming up into my teenage years, starting to make my own decisions, I rebelled against not only my parents, my teachers, and I fell into a group of young men that were into drugs. So from the age of 16, I started smoking marijuana, started smoking methamphetamines, and I found that to be, that was something that I was utilizing to fill these gaps in my life that I didn't want to pay any attention to. The hurt that came with having stepfathers growing up and not knowing my biological father, they stung me in a way that I didn't realize. And to try to get over that hurt and get over that pain that I didn't even want to deal with emotionally, I was using substances. And so I abused substances for 20 years, from the age of 16 till the time I was 36. Rehab wasn't going to work for a guy like me. I didn't want to quit using drugs. So I come up with a different alternative, and I decided to choose a career path that was going to prevent me from being able to utilize drugs. So that started a whole new journey for me and my wife and my kids. We left the state of Texas and joined the military. So for 10 years after that, to get over the drug habit, I started to abuse alcohol. I didn't really start drinking until about the age of 24, and I was a light drinker in the beginning, but it didn't take a year after joining the military for me to try to stay sober best I could without looking for drugs. I really dove into alcohol, and I abused alcohol every day for the next 10 years almost.
So we got married in 2014, and then in 2018, which all up to that point, I had been working on my degrees. So I was in school when we met. Mm-hmm. And so I had always been working towards being a teacher, and so getting my degrees and everything. And finally I graduated, had my degrees, all done, finished with school in 2018. And I started looking for my first teaching job. And that was a nightmare. And it was stressful on both of us. Yes. Because there was a lot of anxiety, and so there was a lot of stress and issues already there.
I had just started.
And then not long after that, he had just started a new job, and so there was a lot going on. And looking back on it, I honestly think that when we left the church, because there was a lot of hurt and stuff there that we didn't deal with, it left the door open, and that allowed, Satan to come in and start wreaking havoc like he likes to do. And
we started fighting.
Yeah, we started fighting
over
lot.
Stupid things.
And
like the little things, criticizing each other for no reasons. And then,
yeah, because we were both still dealing with a lot of hurt that we didn't deal with. Things that got pretty bad.
Yeah.
And then he decided that he was going to move. He was going to stay with his parents for a little bit until he figured out what was going to happen. So we separated. And that was devastating.
Yeah, it was rough.
So at the age of 36, I was at an AA meeting. I had been going for about 2 weeks, and the beginning of every AA meeting starts with a prayer. And this is how great God is, y'all. So if you're smiling, I totally understand. But I was praying with a group of alcoholics who were doing their best to stay sober in a small room, and it felt like the first 3 times I had done it. You walk in the classroom, you introduce yourself, we go around the room and pray, and I thought it was going to be just a regular Thursday evening. And on March 18th, 2019, I heard God's voice for the first time in a long time. And it wasn't because God hadn't talked to me prior to that. It was because for the first time in a long time, I had opened my ears to listen. And God is so wonderful because in a small, still voice, He told me, He said, you don't need to be here. He said, you need to go to church. And so I heard it clearly, and I couldn't be more grateful because I knew that AA was just going to be another failed attempt at me trying to reconcile my own issues. So God led me directly to Neon Life, and after a couple of services, the advertisements that come on Sunday, before we start service, Pastor was up there talking about the men's breakfast that was gonna get started on I can't remember what Saturday that was, but it was the first Saturday of the month, and I went to that men's prayer breakfast that Saturday morning, and God spoke to me again. That was the very next time I heard His voice audibly, and what He told me was, He said, I've called you to be here, and He said, I also want you to tell these men that they're doing a good job. So I stood up and said that at the end of breakfast, and what started to happen as I started to grow into the church, as I started to attend groups with the church and became a part of Neon Team, God continued to pour into my life.
And I sat at a church one night in the rain. I'm surprised the police didn't come and pick me up because I had to have been creepy looking. But I just prayed. Probably the first real prayer that said, I don't want to manipulate. I can't do this. You know what I mean? For the first time in my life, I became not the selfish man I think that I was. And a peace came over me immediately, I feel like. Through that time, coming to Neon Life, I was able to connect with a couple of men from this men's group as I was struggling, still living in my truck. Never told a soul that, but that's what my life was consistent of at the time. And it literally pulled me out of a men's breakfast after I spoke 12 words, never really said what was going on. And they knew it, they could see it on my face. And I'm forever thankful for men who listened to God at that moment instead of falling into conversations about eggs and bacon, which was happening as well. And it literally stood around me and prayed, and you could feel God. You could just feel it. And from that moment, I stopped trying. I just stopped trying, and I prayed every time, all day long.
There's times in your life when God is speaking something so clearly, and there's only those few times where you just know without a doubt that was from God, because that wasn't me. My heart wasn't ready to say those things, but it was just so clear. He just said, Heidi, he's doing everything you could ask him to do. Why would you not give him another chance? Why would you not try? And from that moment forward, I thought, I gotta do what I gotta do. I gotta do what's best for my family, and I gotta do what's best for him. I mean, because I love him, and I wanted to make our marriage work. And so,
deep down, I have to reach out to her. She went through all this trouble to just say everything that she had been going through and everything that was on her heart, and just letting me know that she wasn't done fighting for us. And I was like, well, you know, I have to reach out to her, and we have to talk about this, even if it hurts, and even if it doesn't end the way either of us want it to end. We still have to have that talk, and, you know, give ourselves an opportunity to go forward.
Yeah, my mom ended up dragging me to church, and I went, and I was like, fine, I'll talk to the pastors. So explained the whole situation, and then Eric was like, you need to talk to my wife. Here's her number. And so then I got in touch with Crystal. Like, Crystal didn't even know me from anybody. Nobody. She had never met me before, and yet she was like, can I pray with you? And she just hugged me and prayed with me, and we were both sitting there crying and, you know, going over it. And she was like, I remember, she probably doesn't remember saying this, but she told me, she's like, your marriage isn't done. She's like, God's not done with you yet. And I was like, okay, well, then he's going to have to do something, because...
Somebody tell my husband, because he hadn't heard it yet.
I was like, because we're not seeing eye to eye here. Because literally, we were at a point where we were ready to call it quits. Both of us had walked away from church. We weren't in church. We were both very angry at each other and with God because of everything that had happened at our previous church and all the hurt that accumulated there. So we were probably that was the lowest part either one of us had ever gone through, I think.
Yeah.
And then God completely flipped it. And in 3 months, God completely flipped it. We're back together. We have the silliest, goofiest, smartest little girl ever. And I mean, we're both serving faithfully. We're both happy, and our marriage is, I think,
better than it's ever
stronger
been.
than it's ever been. So it didn't dawn on me until after that, after we were talking about our whole situation and how, you know, God restored everything and how much Satan tried to destroy everything. He tried to destroy everything. That it dawned on me, like, if Satan had succeeded, this little girl would not have been born. I think from the point when we started coming up until now, I know for both of us, there's been a lot of healing, both not only in our marriage, but in our own personal relationships with God. Like, there's just been a lot of healing that's taken place. And I think that's a testament to Neon Life, is that it's a place where you can go and you can heal. No matter how jacked up you may feel you are,
Yeah.
or
what hurts you might come in with.
yeah, it's a place that I know we both have experienced a lot of healing. Going to my first group was very much out of my comfort zone, but I ended up meeting a lot of people there, and then being on the worship team. We're together all the time, so it's basically like another family, and we're always joking in text threads and stuff, so it's it's building those relationships.
He was there for us when we needed it, when I called out and when I cried out night after night. I felt heard. I felt it with chill bumps down my arms. When I turned on the music, when I read the Bible, when I came to Neon Life, when I connected with men's group and those guys reached out to me in times that were the minute that I needed it. When I had just fallen to my knees, or when I had just opened up a scripture, my phone rang with some of those guys. And that doesn't happen. That's God himself. And so seeing that take place in your own life at 42 years old is pretty remarkable. There's not a thing that goes by day to day now that I don't see differently, and that I don't feel differently. My son calls me new dad.
Yeah.
In kind of a disrespectful tone, maybe. But every time he says it, I see it as such a remarkable change in me that he notices that I'm literally a new person. And that's something that only God can do. And it makes me so excited to start our family again with God first, and church first.
That's what we have to do. We have to completely surrender our life. And it's not, as a young person, I totally thought that meant that I was going to become a church slave or something. I don't even know how to explain it, but I was going to have to live in this bondage of whatever spiritual life looked like to me at that time. And that's 100% opposite of what it is. When I surrendered my life to God, I found freedom, and I get to live in a shiny new world that brings me joy in ways that I would have never found through drugs and alcohol. The high that I get from being around people that love God, and the high that the Holy Spirit gives me, and I don't even know if it's okay to call it a high, but it's far greater than anything I ever tried to find on my own.